Welcome to Where Parents Talk. My name is Lianne Castelino. Our guest today is a former NHL goaltender and goaltending coach. He's the current color commentator for SportsNet and the Vancouver Canucks. He's a podcast host, a professional speaker, and an advocate for mental wellness. Corey Hirsch is also a father of three and a first-time author. His book, released in the fall of 2022, is called The Save of My Life, My Journey Out of the Dark. Corey Hirsch joins us today from Vancouver. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be on your program. It's just nice to be able to get the word out there on mental health and be able to have you give me a platform to be able to do it. So I appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time to talk about a topic that you have been so candid about in terms of your struggles during your 10-year NHL career with obsessive compulsive disorder and anxiety at a time when this topic was not discussed. Here we are. Your book has come out at a time when society's conversation around mental wellness has never been louder. So why did you want to write this book?
Well, I had written an article in the Players Tribune back 4 or 5 years ago that hit really hard. It hit a lot hard. It had almost 2 million hits in under an hour, online published article. And it just really showed me that, we're ready to talk about mental health. The book I felt was necessary because I can educate through the book. Through the article, it's just a read. It's about your story. This is what happened. But writing a book, my goal is to educate people. What happened with me, what missed with me, what we can do better, what the system can do better, what you can do for your kids, for your friends. I can't do that in just a quick article. In a book, I can do that. I can tell my story. I can show stories of what happened. I can make examples. I can do a lot of different things. It's just a lot more in depth of what my story is. And hopefully someone out there reads it and go, you know what? I struggle too, and I'm going to go get help.
So take us through that journey, Corey, if you could, a little bit. This is about a 2-year process, as I understand it, in terms of writing this book. Could you describe for us your approach? You said you wanted to educate people, but what was your approach having to relive a lot of what you went through as you set out to write this book?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I was okay until... So the book was written, you rewrite it, you go through it a bunch of different times, you try and make it, as descriptive as possible, you try to make it the best read possible. And then Sean Conboy, who wrote my Players Tribune article, came on board, and he took the book to another level. And I'll be honest, after he got the book and was able, he's such a talented writer, it's been really hard for me to read. And I haven't actually read it. I've read bits and pieces of it. I mean, I know the story, right? I lived it. But the way he was able to take it to that next level so that people really knew what it was like, I sat there and I'm like, Sean, were you sitting there beside me during all this, when it was happening when I was younger? Because it was so bizarre. He just, such a talented writer that did such a great job that it was almost too real for me. So it was hard, but for other people though, it's not, the book isn't about me though. The book is about trying to help other people, really, and show that, this is what OCD, this is what mental health is like. There's so many misconceptions out there about OCD and mental health that, hey, this is my story. I lived it. And if someone else is living there, you could have a great life too.
On that note, what would you say that you remember from the darkest period, darkest moments in that time that you struggled through as a young adult and a successful professional athlete?
Yeah, it's funny that you asked that, because I was just talking to one of the ladies that handles my PR from Canberra Communications, and I said to her yesterday, I said, I can vividly remember laying in my bed and saying, if I ever get out of this, I'm going to do everything I can to help people and to give them hope. Because back then it would have been mid 90s probably. There was no internet, no Google machine. You had to go to a bookstore to find help. And you had to, and I went to bookstores and I scoured bookstores and I scoured self-help sections, and there was nothing, absolutely nothing that made me feel like I was going to become I was going to get better, that I wasn't doomed to a life of mental issues and struggling. So I promised myself that day that if I did get that, one day I would, be able to do something that would let people know, hey, you're not doomed to a life of being a prisoner in your own mind. It gets better. You can go on to live a fantastic life.
Corey, could you take us through how this journey of yours and your candor around this topic, your desire to educate and help and support people, how has this affected or impacted your role as a dad?
Oh, it's impacted it quite a bit. I'll be honest. One of my children, I won't say which one, but when they were 15 years old, came to me and was like, "Dad, I'm having some funky thoughts in my brain. I don't know what they are. I don't know why they are." And this story is extremely important because we always talked about mental health in our home because of what I went through. And I let my kids know, you come to me no matter what, we'll figure it out. So that child, we took that person to a psychologist, and they were diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder as well, because some genetics at play too here. I have obsessive compulsive disorder, and I made a suicide attempt because I was not educated on it. I was not taught about it. I knew nothing about it to the point where I felt there was no way out. My child will never get to that place. Why? Because we talked about it, because I educated them on it, and we got them help right away. That's how important it is to educate your children, and how easy it is. And I do have a bit of a chip on my shoulder. Why wasn't I taught? It's so easy to talk about. It's so easy to tell somebody. Why was it hidden from me? If I'd have known after when I got sick, just to go get help, get diagnosed, do this, do that, I would have never ended up in a suicide attempt. Hence, my child, different story. And we need to do that. We're doing our children a disservice if we don't teach them about mental health.
Absolutely. And there are going to be people who listen to this interview and watch this interview, mothers and fathers, families who are struggling with this. They might not know the starting point of where to go. They might think of going to their family doctor first, or they might, try to research Dr. Google, etc. Having lived it yourself, having had the experience of your child as you describe, what would you suggest makes the most amount of sense as an appropriate first place to go if you or somebody in your family does have a mental health condition that needs to be addressed?
No, these are excellent questions, because this is exactly why I speak. Well, the first place is to be an open person for your children, for yourself, for your spouse, for whoever it is. Be someone that's going to be non-judgmental, and hey, you can talk to me about anything. We'll get you the help, so that someone doesn't feel like shame or the embarrassment or the guilt, or they can't talk to people. So that's the first step. Second step is probably your family practitioner. A lot of people are scared to go because of, well, what if I'm going to say? They've heard and seen it all. You cannot surprise them. And then from there, probably get a referral to a psychologist, like whatever it is, a psychiatrist, maybe some medication. From there, it's no different than, and I try to explain it like this. It's no different than if you're running track and you tear your ACL. Well, who's the first person you go see? Well, you go see your family doctor. Where do they send you to the they send you to the physiotherapist, right? It's no different than mental health. You might end up on medication for your torn ACL. You might not, right? Same with mental health. You might end up on medication. You end up going, you do the therapy, you go on with your life, right? But we treat them as two separate entities. We treat them as they're separate. It's the same thing. It's the same process. And there's no need to be afraid to go get help for mental health issues.
In the 1990s, when this struggle was part of your daily life, you were already a Stanley Cup winner. You've had an Olympic medal around your neck. You had made an NHL team. You were part of the NHL. I mean, you had done a lot at a very young age and battling this secret. Looking back on it now, what could you have done differently to avoid going so far down a road all by yourself?
When I look back now, what I could have done differently was ask for help. But back then, during those times, you just didn't. And I don't think I could have done anything much different than what I did. Because I wasn't educated. What you can't do something about something that you don't know. So that's where the importance of education is. Looking back on all of that, I have to be, it's still hard for me, but I have to be proud of what I accomplished. I mean, I had an extremely severe mental health issue and I made an NHL team. And when I talk now, I say, don't tell me I was weak. Don't tell me I am weak. I made the NHL with a extreme severe mental health issue. Michael Phelps, 23 gold medals, suffers from depression, anxiety. He's weak all of a sudden. So we need to stop seeing people have mental health issues as weak, because they are some of the strongest, most resilient, incredible people I know. And that's what I talk about. I mean, look at me, right? And I'm not bragging or boasting or being arrogant. I want to show people that you're not doomed to a life of failure. I've played in the NHL. I've played in the Olympics. I'm an NHL broadcaster. I coached in the NHL. I have a podcast called Blindside with the Players Tribune that's, was nominated for a Webby. It's all these things, and I have a mental health issue. It will never go away, but don't tell me I'm weak.
When you think about it, Corey, what helped you get through that? Like what was that thing? I know that you ended up finding somebody to talk to, but it does take a certain amount of intestinal fortitude and strength that you probably didn't know you had to get through that. So what was that for you?
Resilience. And that's where people a lot of times ask me, well, did hockey do this to you? Like, is hockey the problem? Is it too much pressure? Hockey saved my life. Hockey taught me resilience. Hockey taught me that you just keep pushing forward and you put one foot in front of the other and get to the next day, and you keep going. And it gave me friends, and it gave me so many life skills. And I'm not sure where I would have been without those life skills, that life skill of resilience. Yeah, there were some really dark days, I'm not going to lie. But just get to tomorrow. Tomorrow's usually a better day. And from there, you'll figure it out. Just let's focus on today and getting to tomorrow. And that's kind of how I got through it.
Youth mental health has been described by multiple organizations, individuals, experts, scientists as a global epidemic. When you hear from young people today in all the different things that you do, what strikes you most?
The fact that we still aren't educating them. We are, but we're not. The fact that it's not part of our school curriculum. The fact that we still have people, not believing that there's mental health issues. I'll see people that, their child can barely get their head off their desk. They're struggling. They don't have any friends, and the parents are fighting over whether or not to medicate the child. Your child has no quality of life. And that's the other side of it. There's a stigma on medication. We shouldn't shame people for being on medication. I'm on medication. I'd rather be here alive for my children and live a great life than not. And I didn't ask for OCD. I didn't ask for mental health issues. So why am I ashamed? Something in my brain doesn't function properly. How is that my fault? It's no different than someone, that has a heart problem. Well, they got to get on some medication. I don't shame them for being, on medication for their heart, but for someone's brain, I mean, they're physical pieces of matter. They break. That's what it is. There isn't a person out there that doesn't, have an issue with their brain. There's great advances coming in plant medicine. There's outstanding, I don't push pharma, but if you need medication, you need medication, and you should not be afraid to take it. And we shouldn't shame other people for taking it too.
Along the same lines, what are you hearing from parents of kids struggling with mental health issues about what they're going through, trying to manage something that for the most part, most people have no idea about, aren't anticipating those things becoming part of their lives? What are you hearing from parents about their struggles with this?
Yeah, the parents, and I echo their frustration in the sense that the wait times are too long, right? They don't know where to go. So one, that comes back to educating somebody as to where to go. If you have let's say you blow out your knee playing sports, you don't go to the shoulder or the heart surgeon to get it fixed, right? You go to the knee surgeon. It's the same thing with mental health. Your child's got OCD, well, go to the OCD specialist. Your child suffers from depression, go see someone that does is great in depression. Go see there's different specialized people for different things. It's no different. The wait times, though, are something that aren't our psychologists or psychiatrists' fault. It's not their fault. They're overwhelmed themselves. And they're trying to do their best. We need to educate our kids and say, hey, you know what? Maybe a good path. Give them incentives to go become psychiatrists. Give them incentives to come go and be psychologists, because we need more of that. And the school system still isn't set up to promote careers in psychology or psychiatry or social work. And that's what we need to do. We need to encourage our kids and give them incentives to go and become that, so that maybe we can put a dent in that waiting list.
As you learn more about this and sort of all of the work that you're doing around it, and all sort of the network that you've built, that it continues to grow through all of your work, is there anything else that you think needs to be happening that is not happening? You talked about teaching about this in schools. You talked about, addressing wait times. But is there anything else that needs to happen to address youth mental health challenges in particular?
Oh, I mean, that we could go on for hours. The other is to teach our males and even a lot of our females that it's okay to talk to your buddies, that it's okay to have feelings, that it's okay to to go see and get psychiatry help, right? I can still fix a car, I can still play hockey, I can still do all these manly things, and I cry, right? Doesn't make me any less of a man. And we need to teach our kids that is something that it's okay, right? And it's okay. And I always say this, we're always the masculine portion of it, and I think our kids are getting better. But I always say this, and I say, if I had taken my life that day, back then, I was taught not to cry, all those things. Would any of my teammates come into my funeral and said, "Oh, what a man, he sucked it up, what a great, he went out like"? No, they all would have said the same thing. Why didn't he talk to me? I would have helped him. We would do anything to help him. So, talk to somebody you trust if you need it. And we need to help our kids. We need to educate them. This is, we're beyond, this. And because there's a kid right there, just like me, standing on the edge of a cliff right now, contemplating taking his or her life. And they need us. They need us. And I need your help. I need your help to help them. Every suicide we've failed that child, and we need to put a dent in those numbers.
Corey, I'm curious, over the course of writing your book, The Save of My Life, what would you say that you learned about yourself?
What did I learn about myself? Wow. Things were darker than I thought they were. No, I think I learned more that, it solidifies that just because I have a mental health issue, I can still do anything. I can write a book. I can do this. I can do it. It solidifies for me, and it teaches me that mental health does not have to hold you back. It does not mean you're doomed to a life of failure or being less than anybody else. And I think it just, reiterated that for me. Now I have a book out, right? And the other side of it too is that there is a lot of kindness and compassion out there and empathy for mental health. And again, just like today, thank you for having me, because I don't get to be able to educate and talk about my stuff if people such as yourself don't reach out and allow me to be on your show. So it goes twofold, both ways.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time and being, again, so open about your story. I want to talk about your three children who are aged 24, 22, and 17. I think it's really striking, the story that you shared, that your one child came to you when that child was struggling. What do you think made that child feel comfortable to come to his or her father and let them know that this is what was happening? Because that is a stumbling block in many families that sometimes they never can get over till it's too late.
Well, and that's exactly it. Well, there's things you have to look out for one, as a parent. Teenagers don't lock themselves in the room in their own room for 3 or 4 months and never come out. And we think that they're just teenagers. No, something's up, right? Like, if something is going on. Yes, they spend a little more time in their room. Yes, they sleep a little bit more. But if they're not coming out ever, something's going on. You got to watch the circle of friends they're hanging out with, right? Kids they'll seek out like children, how they're dressing, put your phone down when you talk to your kids, and I'm not saying I'm great at it. I got it. I do too. Put your phone down. They just want your attention, and use the term. I always say this: when you talk to your kids, say, "Tell me." Don't say, "How are you doing?" Say, "Tell me what's going on in math. Tell me what's happening with Joe. Tell me what's happening in this situation. Use the term tell me, because then they have to kind of give you more than a one-word answer. If you say, how are you? They go, good, fine. And they go mosey on their way. If you say, tell me what you did today, then they have to tell you, right? They can't go, good, fine. So it's all in your approach of how you talk to them, and just sit down and let them know, like, hey, something's going on in your brain. I am not going to judge you. I'm going to get you the help you need, and we're going to go and we're going to fix whatever problems you have.
It's such an important point that you just made there with the language that you use when you're talking to your kids. Tell me versus how this or how that. I wish I had known that a few years back, because it takes a while to learn, and you got to stumble and fall, and you finally get to a place where you're like, I should have been doing that. But it's never too late to change. So I think that's a really important point that you made. Corey, when you think back on your role as a dad, first of all, how would you describe in general your parenting style?
Yeah, that's a tough one, hey, because I'm gonna have to lie a little bit here. No, you know what? I have my own mental health issues, right? So my parenting style is that I have to let my kids know that sometimes I still struggle. It's not about them. I don't love them less or anything, but I have my own battles. So that's first and foremost. The second is that they can come to me with anything. I've told them anything short of murder, I think we're good. You can come to me. So, but no, I'm an open door policy and an open book, and I make mistakes. I make lots of mistakes as a parent. But the open and honest communication is the biggest thing. When I show vulnerability to my children, parents think that they can't ever show vulnerability to their children, because what would they? No, you need to show that vulnerability. Your kids need to see you cry. They need to see you struggle and get through it, right? That's how they're going to learn, because you're an example for them, and they need to see your vulnerability so that they can share theirs if they need to. I think that's the greatest gift you can give your kids, is to let them know that you're human too.
Well, and it's so interesting you bring up that point, because is that something that you prioritized as a dad early on? That is to say, having these healthy conversations with your children, because the fact is so much of parenting is learning on the fly, right? So how did you decide to prioritize having those healthy conversations? And it has to start at a young age, presumably.
Oh, no question. And don't I am God, I made so many mistakes, and age brings wisdom, right? It does.
Mm-hmm.
So I've had to learn a lot of things, and I think with your kids, and you do learn on the fly. You really do. And I didn't do everything right. There's lots of things I could go. I wish I would have spent more time with them. That's my biggest downfall, is I didn't spend enough time with my children. But when we did talk, they were open and honest communication. It wasn't anybody trying to hide anything. I think secrets are toxic. I think secrets cause mental health issues. And here's the other thing that I talk about, and it's not so much about your children, but I'll say this, and it's about your spouse. I'm divorced. I mean, and my marriage crumbled, and part of it's 50-50, whatever. That's for next week's show. But I'll see people struggling with mental health and struggling in their situation with their spouse, and they don't talk to each other, and especially men, because you're taught, well, I don't talk to the females. I don't talk to them. I talk to, I'm going to go in my cave and suffer in silence, right? Because that's what men do. Your spouse is your best friend, right? They do anything for you, or they should. And listen, you need to communicate, because I'll tell you what, divorce hurts a hell of a lot more than talking to your partner about your problems. And you want good kids. That's the first place to start, is make sure that your relationship is strong, and your kids show your kids, what an open communication is with a partner in a marriage.
One of the things that you brought up a little earlier was the whole idea of social media not having existed when you were going through this, the internet not really being anything as we know it today. Social media, you've got one teenager. I wonder what that looks like in your house, because particularly during the pandemic, I'm sure there's many people who would agree, social media has just been, I don't even know what to call it in terms of the negativity and the toxicity on it. So what is your approach in terms of how your youngest in this example uses social media?
Well, the way, and I've learned the hard way myself, because I'm in media and I'm in sport and I'm a forward. So I've had to learn the hard way myself on a few things in social media. One is, um, you, you can use social media for a weapon, or you can use it for good. There's lots of good that comes out of social media, but there's people that choose to use it as a weapon. So that's up to you. And I would rather use it for good. And if you are using it for a weapon, shame on you. You need to stop. The second is to not have any emotion tied to social media. So if you're going to tweet something or say something, it's not out of anger, it's not out of hate, it's not out of sadness, anything like that. Take your emotion out of anything you tweet, anything you talk about. Because that's usually where you get in trouble. The other is it's up to the parents to monitor their social media. I mean, so statistically in the US, between 2007 and 2017, ages 10 to 24-year-olds, suicide went up 56%. Well, I mean, where's social media in that? Where's the internet in that, right? Right in that wheelhouse. And I'm sure if you looked at Canada, the numbers probably aren't much different. So my point being with that is that social media is something that you need your kid's password. You need to know what it is. You need to be on their account. You need to be following them. They need to be following you. You need to be right on. It's the same as years ago, when you had to watch your kids at school and who they were hanging out with when there was no internet and all that. You need to know what they're doing on social media. And like I said, two choices. You can teach them to use it as a weapon or for good. And I'd rather use it for good.
Absolutely. Corey, what do you want readers of your book to take away from it?
Ultimately, that you can go through absolute hell in your life and it gets better. That, you could be going through the worst of times. Just get to tomorrow. Don't worry about 6 months from now, a year from now. Just get to tomorrow, and that you're not doomed to a life of misery. You can go on to do incredible things, that there is help, there is hope, there's treatments available, but you got to be willing to go get it and do the work.
Wonderful advice. Corey Hirsch, author of The Save of My Life, My Journey Out of the Dark, also a SportsNet color commentator for the Vancouver Canucks, speaker as well. Thank you so much for your time and your candor today.
Like I said, thank you. Without you, I don't get the platform. So I appreciate it just as much as you do.
Thank you.